Welcome to my channel. My name is Shinko, and today we are reading Chapter 1 of The Warriors by Erin Hunter. We left off after reading the Prologue, which is just the beginning. Essentially what happened was two clans were fighting over territory. Apparently, Sunning Rocks belonged to Thunder Clan. River Clan decided to attack. River Clan won the battle. Therefore, they won the territory. Then we switched over to the leader of Thunder Clan, Blue Star, and her medicine cat, Spotted Leaf. A shooting star went across the sky, and that message from Star Clan told them fire will save the clan. That's where we left off. Here's Chapter 1. It was very dark. Rusty could sense something was near. The young tomcat's eyes opened wide as he scanned the dense undergrowth. This place was unfamiliar, but the strange sense drew him onward, deeper into the shadows. His stomach growled, reminding him of his hunger. He opened his jaw slightly to let the warm smells of the forest reach the scent glands on the roof of his mouth. Musty odors of leaf mold mingled with the tempting aroma of a small, furry creature. Suddenly, a flash of gray raced past him. Rusty stopped still, listening. It was hiding in the leaves, less than 2 tail lengths away. Rusty knew it was a mouse. He could feel the rapid pulsing of a tiny heart deep within his ear fur. He swallowed, stifling his rumbling stomach. Soon his hunger would be satisfied. Slowly, he lowered his body into position, crouching for the attack. He was downwind of the mouse. He knew it was not aware of him. With one final check on his prey's position, Rusty pushed back hard on his haunches and sprang, kicking up leaves on the forest floor as he rose. The mouse dived for cover, heading towards a hole in the ground. But Rusty was already on top of it. He scooped it into the air, hooking the helpless creature with his thorn-sharp claws, flinging it high in an arc onto the leaf-covered ground. The mouse landed, dazed, but alive. It tried to run, but Rusty snatched it up again. He tossed the mouse once more, this time a little further away. The mouse managed to scramble a few paces before Rusty caught up with it. Suddenly, a noise roared nearby. Rusty looked around, and as he did so, the mouse was able to pull away from his claws. When Rusty turned back, saw it dart into the darkness among the tangled roots of a tree. Angry, he gave up the hunt. Rusty spun around, his green eyes glaring, intent on searching out the noise that cost him his kill. The sound rattled on, becoming more familiar. Rusty blinked open his eyes. The forest had disappeared. He was inside a hot and airless kitchen, curled in his bed. Moonlight filtered through the window, casting shadows on the smooth, hard floor. The noise had been the rattle of dried, hard pellets of food as they were tipped into his dish. Rusty had been dreaming. Lifting his head, he rested his chin on the side of his bed. His collar rubbed uncomfortably around his neck. In his dream, he felt fresh air ruffling the soft fur, where the collar pinched uncomfortably. Rusty rolled onto his back, savoring the dream for a few more moments. He could still smell the mouse. It was the 3rd time since this full moon that he had the same exact dream. And every time, the mouse managed to escape. He licked his lips. From his bed, he could smell the bland odor of his food. His owners always refilled his dish before they went to bed. The dusty smell chased away the warm sense of his dream, but the hunger rumbled on in his stomach, and so Rusty stretched the sleep out of his limbs, padded across the kitchen floor to his dinner. The food felt dry, tasteless on his tongue. He reluctantly swallowed one more mouthful, then turned away from the food dish and pushed his way out through the cat flap, hoping that the smell of the garden would bring back the feelings from his dream. Outside, the moon was bright. It was raining lightly. Rusty stalked down the tiny garden, following the starlit gravel path, feeling the stones cold and sharp beneath his paws. He made his dirt beneath a large bush with glossy green leaves and heavy purple flowers. The sickly sweet scent cloyed damp air around him. He curled his lips to drive the smell out of his nostrils. Afterwards, Rusty settled down on top of one of the posts in the fence that marked the limits of his garden. It was a favorite spot of his, as he could see right into the neighboring gardens as well as the dense green forest on the other side. The rain had stopped. Behind him, the close-cropped lawn was bathed in moonlight, but beyond his fence, the woods were full of shadows. Rusty stretched his head forward to take a sniff of the damp air. His skin was warm and dry under his thick coat, but he could feel the weight of the raindrops that sparkled on his bright red ginger fur. He heard his owners giving him one last call from the back door. If he went with them now, they would greet him with gentle words and caresses, welcome him onto their bed, where he would curl, purring, warm in the crook of a bent knee. But this time, Rusty ignored his owner's voice and turned his gaze back to the forest. The crisp smell of the woods had grown fresher after the rain. Suddenly, the fur in his spine prickled. Was something moving up there? Was something watching him? Rusty stared ahead, but it was impossible to see or smell anything in the dark, tree-scented air. He lifted his chin boldly, stood up, and stretched, one paw gripping each corner of the fence post as he straightened his legs and arched his back. He closed his eyes and breathed in the smell of the woods once more. It seemed to promise him something, tempting him onward into the whispering shadows. Tensing his muscles, he crouched for a moment, then leaped onto the rough grass on the other side of the garden fence. As he landed, the bell in his collar rang out through the still night air. "Where are you off to, Rusty?" meowed a familiar voice behind him. Rusty looked up. A young black and white cat was bouncing ungracefully on the fence. "Hello, Smudge," Rusty replied. "You're not going into the woods, are you?" Smudge's amber eyes were huge. "Just for a look," Rusty promised, shifting uncomfortably. "You wouldn't get me in there. It's dangerous." Smudge wrinkled his black nose with distaste. "Henry said he went into the woods once." The cat lifted his head and gestured with his nose over the rows of fences toward the garden where Henry lived. "That fat old tabby never went into the woods," Rusty scoffed. "He's hardly been beyond his own garden since his trip to that vet. All he wants to do is eat and sleep." "No, really, he caught a rabbit there," Smudge insisted. "Well, if he did, it was before the vet. Now he complains about the birds because they disturb his dozing." "Well, anyway," Smudge went on, ignoring the scorn in Rusty's mew, "Henry told me there's all sorts of dangerous animals out there. Huge wildcats who live on live rabbits for breakfast and sharpen their claws on old bones." "I'm only going for a look around," Rusty meowed. "I won't stay long." "Well, don't say I didn't warn you," purred Smudge. The black and white cat turned and plunged off the fence back down into his own garden. Rusty sat down on the coarse grass beyond the garden fence. He gave his shoulder a nervous lick and wondered how much of Smudge's gossip was true. Suddenly, the movement of a tiny creature caught his eye. He watched it scuttle under the brambles. Instinct made him drop low into a crouch, and with one slow paw after another, he drew his body forward through the undergrowth. Ears pricked, nostrils flared, eyes unblinking, he moved towards the animal. He could see it clearly now, sitting among the barbed branches, nibbling on a large seed. Held between its paws, there was a mouse. Rusty rocked his haunches from side to side, preparing to leap. He held his breath in case his bell rang again. Excitement coursed through him, making his heart pound. This was even better than his dreams. Sudden noise of cracking twigs and crunching leaves made him jump, and his bell jangled treacherously. The mouse started away to the thickest tangle of the bramble bush. Rusty stood very still and looked around. He could see the white tip of a red, bushy tail trailing through a clump of tall ferns up ahead. He smelled a strange, strong scent, definitely a meat eater, but neither a cat nor a dog. Distracted, Rusty forgot about the mouse and watched the red tail curiously. He wanted a better look. All of Rusty's senses strained ahead as he prowled forward. Then he detected another mouse. It came from behind, but sounded muted and distant. He swiveled his ears backwards to hear it better. Paw steps? He wondered, but he kept his eyes fixed on the strange red fur up ahead and continued to creep onward. It was only when the faint rustling behind him became a loud, fast approaching leaf crackle that Rusty realized he was in danger. I'm going to stop here. It's still chapter 1. Here are my thoughts so far. First off, it doesn't belong in the kid section. It really doesn't. Definitely. From the very first scene, you could tell that. It's not just the material of the book, how it's written. Very, very descriptive, and it's using a lot of different words as well. There's a large vocabulary compared to many other children's books. Many other books that are kind of like this. So if you don't know, like your colors, for example, it's kind of hard to picture sometimes. It has a table of contents for characters, but it doesn't have a table of contents for terms. Like two-leg, or tail length, or moon high, or green leaf. To me, I know what those mean, but to a new reader, it doesn't necessarily know. Like two-leg means human. Green leaf means spring. Moon high means, about midnight. Terms that you could kind of refer definitely being older, but again, this is supposed to be catered towards kids, right? Just my thoughts. A little hard unless you're older to actually get into and understand fully what's going on. The next video will focus on finishing chapter 1. I hope you have a great day.